What's the creepiest thing you have heard a child say? A few years ago, my favorite uncle unalived of lung cancer in Sri Lanka. My family and I had been booked to fly out and see him in 10 days, but he lost the battle before I got there. I had been scared to see him so weak, but I still wanted him to know how much I loved him, and for him to meet my youngest child, as he had met the oldest the year before. He and my aunt had wanted, but never had kids, so me and a few of my cousins filled that gap over the years. He was the uncle that told stories, played games, and was just fun to mess around with. Other cousins of mine may argue, but I was definitely his favorite, which was why I was so desperate to see him one last time and perhaps why the following event happened. We flew out to Sri Lanka anyway, to see my aunt and spend time with our huge family. My oldest daughter was just 2 and my youngest just a year old then. My aunt had been nervous to be home alone, as many people in Sri Lanka are the first few weeks after a death, since the wake is done at the home. My extended family stayed with her on rotation and we offered to stay 2 nights while we were there. On the second evening, we had a dinner party to go to and my aunt decided to visit a friend/neighbor. While on our way back, she told us to go to her home, and that she would stay with her friend and come in the morning. It didn't faze us at the time that we'd be alone in her house and we agreed. As we parked in front of the house, my youngest was asleep but my then 2-year-old was still up. In my half-sanity of trying to get everyone and everything out of the car, all I heard was my always fussy 2-year-old being extra fussy and loud, and I just didn't want her to wake the little one. I let my husband take her while I carried the little one. Once we got to our room, I put the baby down and began unloading the diaper bag, when I realized that my husband was sitting on the edge of the bed, hugging my 2-year-old. She clung to him, pointing to the doorway and repeating the words, "Man. Coming. Man. Coming." My husband, who isn't easily emotional, looked completely and utterly freaked out. "Did she just say man coming?" I asked him. He proceeded to tell me that when she got out of the car, she was pointing to the front door and said man there, man there. He had no choice but to bring her inside, as I had been oblivious and he was in shock. Apparently, she had been saying man there all the way through the house, till she got to our room. Then it changed to man. Coming. We both looked at each other, then looked in the direction she was pointing in, and then again at each other. My husband suggested we leave, and I was beyond freaked out, but then it occurred to me that if the man, my uncle, were really there, he'd never hurt me or my family and suddenly I just wanted to see what else could possibly happen. My oldest was still saying the 2 words, and I told my husband to calm her down while I got some milk for her. As I walked to the kitchen, I quietly asked my uncle for a sign, so I could know it was him. After getting the milk and going back to the room, my daughter was relatively calm, but my husband looked even more freaked. I gave her the milk and he began to tell me how she kept saying man. Coming for a little while after I left, except that suddenly she buried her head into his chest, as she did when she was shy, something she did with every new or unfamiliar person she met at the time, but that she would peek out and smile shyly and hide and repeat. He said it was like someone was trying to make her laugh. That sounds exactly like what my uncle would do.